Hey everyone, so some people in the league and in the comment section have asked me to explain some of the different terms that I've been using here, such as ratio, wet dry, flat patterns, and to pretty much give a quick overview of how to read a lane graph. So I'll do my best at explaining all of that. So let's do the thing. Let's give it a roll. So most bowlers have seen a lane graph either at a tournament or in league, which looks something like this. If you don't know what you're looking at, it can be confusing and as scary as the comment section. The sheet is basically a visual representation of how the oil is applied to the lane for that particular pattern. Without delving too deep into the whole chart, there's three main things that you should be familiar with: pattern length, pattern volume, and ratio. So the pattern length, this is the length of the pattern from the foul line to the end of the oil being applied. Most league patterns will be somewhere between 39 and 42 feet. Anything less than 37 is considered a short pattern, and anything over 43 is considered a long pattern. You typically just see these lengths though in tournaments and maybe more advanced leagues. The volume that is on the sheet is the amount of oil that has been applied for that particular pattern. The higher the volume, the more oil. So the average amount of oil applied to a pattern is usually between 20 and 25. The volume is usually an indicator of how long the pattern will last before transition starts to occur. Not always, but as a general rule, that's something good to go by. Probably the most commonly asked question that I have, especially since doing these videos, is what I mean by ratio. I've often said I'm bowling on a 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1 or a 2-to-1, and that's simply the difference in the amount of oil in the middle part of the lane compared to the outside part of the lane. The higher the ratio, the easier the pattern will play, such as league conditions or league patterns. Those will always be around 10-to-1 or 12-to-1. So in essence, there's 10 times as much oil in the middle part of the lane compared to the outside part of the lane. The lower the ratio, the tougher the pattern will be. Something like the US Open pattern is often bowled on a 1-to-1 ratio, so the same amount of oil is applied across the lane. So it makes shot making and accuracy a premium because there isn't any dry boards on the outside to help the ball recover. If you're going to look at one thing before you go into a tournament on a graph, just look at the ratio, and that will usually indicate the difficulty of the pattern and how high the scoring will be for that given event. So what happens if you're bowling in a tournament or a league and they're kind of being shady and don't want to tell you or anyone the pattern? Well, it's pretty simple to narrow in what you need to know or kind of get an idea. For starters, you can take a ball and throw it slowly down the middle part of the lane, and when it gets to the end of the pattern, it'll just jump left or right if you're a lefty, so you can get a better understanding of the length based on where it hooked out. The next thing is just to take a strong ball, such as a reality or a gem that doesn't have shine to it, that has some surface to it, and move to the outside of part of the lane and throw it down first arrow around 5 or 6 and see if there's any friction there. If there is, the ball will either hit the head pin high and go through the nose, or it'll go Brooklyn. If it does, just move a few boards toward the middle part of the lane and do the same thing. If it does hook, then you know you have some friction and you can go to something a little bit cleaner and get lined up pretty quick. If you throw it down 5 and it doesn't hook, then you're probably on a flatter pattern or a little bit lower ratio pattern, and you'll need to start off more toward around the second arrow, around 10 or 12, just to kind of get a read on the actual pattern. Flat patterns. So flat patterns are lower ratio patterns. If you look at a typical house shot pattern graph, you can see a mound of oil in the middle and not much on either side of that. The lower the ratio, the flatter the pattern, and not a big mound, hence flat patterns. If you ever compare bowling balls to each other, always try to do it on a flatter pattern. so that way you can get a true read on ball motion. It's very difficult to compare anything on a house shot just because of the nature of the pattern. It makes everything look the same. So if you want to see how a ball truly looks next to one another, compare them on a flat pattern. Wet dry is when there's an extreme amount of oil on the inside compared to the outside. So if you look at the lane graph that I was showing earlier with the house shot, you can kind of see a taper from the outside to the inside part. But on a wet dry pattern, it'll be more like a top hat. It'll just kind of suddenly drop off like a cliff to no oil. What happens is when you miss out, it hooks through the nose, and if you miss in, it will actually miss the head pin toward the gutter side. To combat this, you usually need some ball with some surface so it's not as violent off the dry, and you can still cut through the oil and have enough energy to get the 10 pin or 7 pin out, depending on which side of the lane that you're bowling on. So I hope this has helped and give a better understanding to the lane graphs and some of the terms used when dealing with patterns. If you liked this video or found it somewhat helpful, don't be afraid to smash that like button. I appreciate everyone that has subscribed, and hopefully I've helped out in some way. So if I missed something or you want to see more of these types of videos, let me know in the comments. Hopefully I'll be back doing some more ball reviews here soon. So till next one, peace.